get us started. Our goal for our elementary teacher education program is to have well-started beginners. So by that, for us, that means having teachers who really can demonstrate a beginning proficiency, a good foundation to build upon for high-leverage teaching practices, as well as people who are subject matter serious, really able to represent content, whatever the content is, math, science, social studies, whatever, with integrity. And then we also want teachers who are ethical, who really have a good sense for their professional obligations, are able to recognize and act upon their ethical obligations as professional educators. And so all of this is to have good beginning people to go out there. Hopefully, they'll continue learning with the tools that we give them, just the beginning of a process, but we hope to have them leave us with being well-started beginners. With this goal in mind, we've designed the program to be very much a practice-based program, and by this, we mean a couple of things. One thing is, for us, teaching practice is core content. That is what we're really trying to help our interns learn while they're with us. So all the things on the previous slide, high leverage teaching practices, subject matter that can be taught with integrity, and also ethical obligations. All of that in its intricate, complex configurations, we really want them to be engaged with that as content. This is what they're learning, is practice. And practice for us also is a means of improvement. So it is the way by which people learn practice, is through practice, having opportunities to rehearse and get feedback, having the chance to try and try again and try again. So practice is very much a core piece of what we're doing in our program. And for all of this, as you can imagine, because practice is so central, the sites where practice is actively taking place, where teaching and learning are going on, become really essential for us. And for that reason, video has been incredibly promising for us because it really allows us to have a chance of being able to watch, study, examine teaching practice, to see the facial expressions, the tone, the exact wording being used, really look at practice together, both the interns, our teaching interns, as well as the instructors who work with them. We also really want to be able to extend this work beyond that ephemeral, in-the-moment moments when teaching happens. So to be able to look at it at another time, from another place. So we really want that kind of ability. And then finally also to have the capacity to be able to review, revisit, share, discuss with other people, practice. So for us, video has been pretty important. And with this context in mind, so our journey begins. So our efforts to really seriously dig in and work with records of practice, videos of practice in our program. Hard to say a start date, but we're saying that we really started in earnest in 2010, that academic year. So there were different groups of people trying this out in our program. One group, one way that people try to approach this, work with video, is to use stand-ins for video, not use video, because video is really hard to work with. So they would use audio recordings or transcripts of recordings, just because, again, video was really tough. So they tried other things they could use to examine practice that were not video. So we had some people who were doing that. We also had people who are using technology that is called SneakerNet. And that is essentially data transfer using humans carrying hard drives and USB sticks to deliver their files to their instructor using sneakers. So there would be long queues of students both before, during, and after class just waiting in line to copy their files onto their instructor's hard drive. So SneakerNet was certainly a popular way that instructors got their videos in those early days. That same year, we also experimented with a new fancy technology the University of Michigan had been developing. It was a digital asset management system, or DAMS, pilot that we're trying to make video and other multimedia available to the university for sharing securely. Very promising, the ability to have server access, securely sharing. So we had some people trying out the Bluestream digital asset management system. In reality, however, despite the promise of this system, it was kind of painful, actually. The large video file sizes were just tough to upload. Poor bandwidth at our interns' homes and their favorite coffee shops where they like to try to upload things just were inadequate for doing this. So we thought, okay, compress first, compress your video, make it small, and that'll make the uploads easier. So we developed handy sheets, really easy, like 12-step process to download video, download your own software, free software, install it onto your computer, and then follow 12 or so steps to get the thing up there. For some reason, there wasn't huge uptake. We really couldn't get people to use our compression. Handy dandy method, not so handy, definitely not dandy. And then also, as you can imagine, even for those who were successful getting it up there, they would upload it to the wrong place, they would use the wrong file name. So even if it was in the system, it was almost impossible for instructors to find those files. So it was a very painful time period for us. So that was our Bluestream pilot. But we, so the following year, we got rid of that damn system. And we went back to SneakerNet. But this time, SneakerNet 2.0, which the interns loved. Essentially, the way it worked was you take your sneakers and you walk up to a help desk where you dropped off your media, and a tech support person was responsible for copying that file and uploading it for you, making sure they took on the responsibility of making sure your instructor got your file. As you can imagine, our interns loved this system. It was fabulous. It did get rid of the long queues in the back of the class, but actually it didn't really improve any problems for others. At this point in time, we had these core problems. Still a privacy and security nightmare, having all these little USB sticks and media cards floating around with videos of children in classrooms with novices. Just a ton of worries for IT and admins. And likewise, submitting, while it was easier for the interns to do it, remained a nightmare for the instructors. They were still getting diverse file types that they couldn't even open up sometimes, and they had to get help with. It always included some assembly required. The video was over here, and the lesson plan was over there, and somebody would email your reflection. Like, it was kind of a nightmare and time-consuming for instructors. And then everything comes in with not enough contextual information or supporting information to really understand what you were receiving and how to interpret it. And for both interns and our instructors, there was a lack of ability to really refer to a moment in time. So when instructors were giving feedback, they would say things like, 5 minutes and 20 seconds into the video, you did this and said that, and here's my comment, which was a lot of work, as you can imagine, for the instructors. And then also for the interns, they had to get this Word document or email message that said, okay, 5 minutes and 20 seconds into my video, yeah, trying to remember and associate that with the video was not trivial for anybody. So this was not, we weren't really in a good state we wanted to be in, even at this point in time. So I went to a conference that same year, and I saw a presentation by Adam. And one thing he talked about in this presentation was about drag and drop compression tool that he was developing and was testing, which, given our 12-step process, that sounded a bit better. And then also he talked about things like time-based commenting. So you're able to watch the video and pinpoint a point in time and make a comment right there. And that seemed like it might address some of the issues we were facing as well. He said some other stuff, but frankly, Adam, when you said, you had drag and drop compression, you already had me. So I went up to Adam and we exchanged some email, we exchanged email addresses and wrote some messages. That was in the fall. And by the winter semester, we had our first pilot set up, and Meghan's class was the one that piloted one course with Edthena beta version. We ran it in the winter of 2012. And they didn't use all the features of Edthena, but one thing that counted as a huge, huge success for us was that all the interns were able to submit their video without local tech support, except for maybe 2 people who had super old operating systems or weird file types. So essentially, with Edthena support or drag and drop software, they were able to get those submissions in, and Meghan was able to view them. This was just the beginning for us, but it was enough for us to know that this is what we wanted to be able to do going forward. So we decided, let's go forward. So I just wanted to note at this transition point, still many unknowns, partial solutions. We didn't know what we were going to be doing, how we were going to pay for it, a lot of things we didn't know. There were people caught in between. The interns were not happy to lose SneakerNet 2.0. But we had a commitment to move forward. And so we did. The next time around, we did Edthena beta, but with our full program, full year. And that also went better than we expected. Still, only a couple of people needed help, but everybody, despite the scale-up, was able to take advantage of that by themselves. And following year, Edthena out of beta, and we were also out of pilot mode. We were committed to trying to make this work. And then this year, same thing. Just really quickly, so the core problems I mentioned earlier, we pretty much were not having the first 2 problems at all. We continue to have the issue of needing to work with and learn from video, but that actually was exactly where we wanted people to be. We wanted instructors and interns to work on that. We continue to work on new problems now about preserving those videos in useful ways and being able to reuse them for other purposes like research, intern portfolios, or program assessment and other purposes like that. So that's our story, and Adam will continue.
So I just learned something, actually. I didn't know that it was the promise of drag and drop uploading that convinced her, because thankfully she has not mentioned, and I don't think remembers. She didn't bring it up yesterday when we were talking about the presentation. Didn't bring it up now. So we meet, and I'm like, yeah, well, let's do a demo. This is the beta version of the platform. And this is super exciting, right? I've got somebody from University of Michigan. She's into it. I go to log in, and of course, as happens on beta technology, we're having one of those awesome moments of it not working. So thankfully, she was willing to set up a time for a demo later. And I guess the rest is what we're here to talk to you about today. So I think what's exciting for me about getting to present here today and kind of what I'm going to be focusing on is the way that Edthena has been evolving over time. And I think there are some drastic ways I'll be able to show that are visual. But I think what I hope is the takeaway message is that when Michigan calls us their partner, and we call them our partner, and we call everybody we work with our partner, we do actually mean that authentically, and we are constantly seeking feedback to try and inform and improve the process that we have going on. And so I think you'll even be able to see some of those pretty dramatic changes in what I show you here. So first, one of the ways that we evolved was in our core functionality. Uh-oh, is this turning off? That might be problematic. Do we have a charge or something? This looks like that could be bad for the internet. So this is a shot of the beta platform. It's funny for me looking at this compared to what we have now. But a lot of the core ideas of what we do today were in this platform. So just to give you a sense of what the process looked like, you would play your video, and then you could enter a comment at a specific moment in time. Those comments were also repeated down below. We had visually this very confusing idea of leaving comments below the video but not tied to the video. It was in process. So we watched how people were using this, asked how this process could be better, asked what the research said about how to make this process better. And this is what our platform looks like today. And so to walk you through what the process looks like now, here we are, we're watching a video. This playhead which is the plus sign here, tracks across that timeline on the bottom. When I'm ready to leave a comment, I just click that plus sign. You're presented with this comment type option. So this is novel to the Edthena experience and something that we developed as a result of the feedback on that first platform. So every comment is assigned a type, question, suggestion, strength, or note. You click one, here I am. I'm able to leave my authentic text-based comment at a specific moment in time. And then with just a click, I can actually link every single comment to the standardized language of whatever framework is in use in my program. And so then you click the submit button, and everything instantly updates, which the original version did not instantly update. And so you see now that marker on the timeline, the comment count increased down below, and the comments inserting down below. The second way that we've been able to evolve is around organizational logistics. And so I actually have two examples for you here. One was so terrible that I couldn't get an image. No, actually, I couldn't just figure out how to demonstrate it visually. So the first way is creating groups. In the first platform, everything was centered around the idea of groups, just as it is today. But you had to go in and you had to create a group, and then you had to tell your candidates, okay, go join group whatever. That seemed really good at first until we heard back from our programs, oh my goodness, the candidates aren't joining the groups, they don't have anywhere to put their videos, this is a problem. Okay, so we made a little bit of an improvement, and then, I found this old help document on this. So then we created a secret way for the faculty at Michigan, because actually they were the only ones that were using this secret function at the time. And they could go in and they could change the URL in a certain way, and it would open up a different feature on the page. I'm not joking, this is actually how it worked. It was still a nightmare, because then they'd be emailing, I can't find so-and-so because they didn't use the right username, so it was all tied to the username. They didn't have good visibility into who was in the platform. Fast forward to today, in the new platform, which you just saw, based on that unpleasant experience, we actually spent a lot of effort into simplifying and making it as simple as, okay, over here I've got my list of 5, 10, 50, whatever it is, people. I'm going to copy their emails. It doesn't matter what format they're in. You paste all those emails into Edthena. We can spider around in our system and find out all the information. If they're not a member, we automatically invite them in. And most importantly, we automatically track them into the group. So they used to have these, what they would tell me were these group creation parties. Thankfully now, when we rolled out the new version, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's just going to take you about 5 minutes. They're like, really? Because, we used to spend like all night doing that. I'm like, yeah, I promise, just about 5 minutes. The second thing I want to talk about is the video tool. So Kara mentioned the first version. In that beta version, we did have a prototype, this idea of a drag and drop uploader. I didn't find a screenshot of that old version, but I wanted to show you about what that looks like today and something that we inserted as a result of the feedback we got. So this is what the video tool looks like in giant form. So you open it up, you can browse to a video, but what everybody really likes is drag and drop. If you can train your candidates to drag and drop, they can now upload video. So you drag it in, you drop it there, and then this is what we learned from our programs. They really wanted to trim their videos. Makes perfect sense. We didn't have it at first. So now candidates can actually, before they upload, trim their videos down to the exact size that you're asking for. Huge win, because it's all integrated. And not only is there a benefit to the coach receiving less video, but the candidate has to now compress less video, which makes ultimately the process much, much faster for them, which increases satisfaction. The last thing I want to talk about, and the way that we involved Edthena, was developing tools to manage the learning process. So in the old platform, we actually had a first stab at this idea. We called them focus topics. And basically it was like, you're going to be in here, you need to have something to organize the idea that, whether you call it an assignment or whatever, something's happening and that these clips are unified across people in some way. And so with the launch of the new platform, we didn't have focus topics at first, which caused a bit of a revolt. And then we had to release a mini version of focus topics to kind of bridge. But this was all because we were trying to wait for a whole year, and we did wait for a whole year. And so what we did is we released the new platform, we watched how everyone was using it, and then we went back to our partners and said, and I did this with Michigan and others as well. I think actually I might have gotten one of your assignments, Meghan. And we basically said, okay, can you please send us all the assignments that correlate to these videos that we see in our system? We don't really understand what you're telling your candidates to do that's causing them and leading them to this series of actions. And as a result, we kind of gathered all this information, generalized it in a way that would work for all of our programs. One tool to work for all of our programs. And that is a very significant set of tools inside of our platform that we call explorations. So this is an entire system inside of Edthena to design the learning experience, set the expectation for the follow-through, and more importantly, as the coach, have the workflow to easily review and provide feedback to all of your candidates in a very easy and streamlined way. Now, I don't have time today to go through all of them. So there are 4 types: video evidence, which would be the core video evidence that, commenting experience; feedback to peers, which I'm going to talk about here; example analysis, which is actually using a standardized clip and sharing it once and having all of your candidates comment on it, kind of like standardized patients for doctors. Now you can do that with your candidates. And the last is other artifacts, which is actually extending the functionality of Edthena beyond just video. And actually that came based on feedback as well, because Michigan was doing some things beyond video inside of our system. And it became apparent they had some very creative ways of doing this in a system that only did video.
So we made a 1-second video that said documents.
So we realized maybe there might be some experiences that don't need video, like, please show me your long-term plan, or a real assignment at Michigan, please go interview a student on audio and reflect on how that student's background is impacting your teaching practice in your placement classroom. So actually the ability to not use video. Okay, so I skipped over feedback to peers. This is actually my favorite one. This is my favorite one because this is something that sounds so obvious and everybody wants their candidates to do, which is provide feedback to peers. But before we actually built this tool called Feedback to Peers, you had no way to actually monitor what your candidates were doing when they commented on other people. So now this is a view that the candidate would see when they come in. They're presented with all the videos from their peers related to this one particular exploration, so they don't end up commenting on the wrong video. So they pick the videos that they're supposed to watch, they leave their comments, and then when you as the coach come back in, you very quickly see where they've left those comments and now can provide kind of that summary level feedback. Oh, Adam, I noticed that you're only saying good job, and you're not being very specific, and you're not really offering any suggestions for change. You can now do that inside our platform. Again, this is really the outcome of all the feedback we got, especially from Michigan and that other artifacts. I'm not sure I honestly don't think we would have had that if you had been doing this crazy 1-second video thing in the original beta platform. All right, so enough of me talking, and now to see how they're using it.
You checking me?
Wi-Fi restart.
Go ahead.
Okay. So you can imagine.
Don't pay any attention to me.
Technology.
Hang on, why is this
help.
not working?
Uh-oh.
Did you get kicked out of the wall or something? Hello.
Uh-oh. I'll talk and you do that.
They turn it off or something?
This is the one that's recording. So
Well, I know, but we need to have
We
people
need-
hear the video.
So I'm going to talk while he's doing that. So as the elementary clinical experiences coordinator, you can imagine for both our undergraduate and our master's level program, we're committed to records of practice, and video being a major record of practice, that all of our interns from the very beginning of their experience, where they have field placements from beginning to end of their program, they are collecting video on all of their teaching for courses that are embedded in the field and in their field placements. It's an integral part of our program right from the very beginning. Interns purchase cameras and they're videotaping from day one. So you can imagine some of the challenges that presents for a program that's immersed in practice. One of the main challenges is witnessing for us. You can imagine witnessing is a big part of our program, but it comes with many challenges for field instructors and course instructors who are committed to having assignments that play out in the field. So being there is a huge challenge, as you can imagine. The logistics of being there, if you're a field instructor who has a group of interns that they're working with, or a course instructor who has an assignment that plays out in the field and wants to see the interns teaching. Another problem of witnessing is, of course, that in-the-moment nature of teaching, that ephemeral nature of teaching, that it disappears and it leaves no residue unless you do something like video. And then as a novice, having access to one's own practice in the moment, we know that that's incredibly hard for somebody who's just learning to teach to do, as often they're really focused on the children in front of them and the management issues and thinking about their own plan in their own head, so really focused on their performance. And then also the inadequate space that there is for having conversation about teaching. We know that when interns are in the field, they are often going right into the next teaching move, and there's not space for those conversations. So with Edthena, you can imagine how it's changed our program to be able to have them upload their videos. So this is an example from our master's program where the interns begin right away during the summer in a 4-week summer learning institute with kids where they're teaching literacy and math every day for 4 weeks to rising first and third graders. So 2 lessons every day that they're teaching right from the beginning of their program. And there are only 2 field instructors and a few course instructors, so it's impossible to see everybody teaching those lessons. But with Edthena, every night they upload their videos, and this gives not only the field instructors but the course instructors an opportunity to see the teaching that they did. It also gives the intern a moment to step away from their practice, leave it at the end of the day, and come back to it later that evening. And as you can see in this case, this intern has a question about the mathematics teaching that they were doing, and they were able to get feedback from their field instructor, as well as a follow-up question from their field instructor about the math and the nature of the teaching itself. So you can see that Edthena has helped us to respond to the challenges that we had about witnessing. We can be elsewhere. We don't have to be there in the moment because we know we can't always be there in the moment when interns are teaching. It creates a tangible record for us to go back to, not only for the intern themselves to reflect on their teaching, but also for the course instructors and field instructors, as well as the mentor teachers who are working with the interns. It also gives the intern that moment to really step away out of the practice, away from kids, and be able to look back at their teaching and think about what questions they have. We know that in the immediacy of stepping away for a debrief right after teaching, often interns don't know what to ask yet. They don't know what to say. They need a moment to step away and look at it again, and again maybe. And then it opens up this wonderful space for that dialogue that is out of the immediate time frame of the teaching, for them to have a dialogue, a conversation back and forth, as you saw just in the nature of those comments. Asking a question, providing some feedback, giving information, and then asking another question, and extending that teaching moment and the reflection for the intern. So another problem that we face in a practice-based program is having a coherent message about teaching when you're working across multiple constituencies. This is a big issue for us because we really care about having everyone's voice be a part of helping that novice to learn and grow. So we have multiple perspectives taking place and sharing that space of growing teaching with interns. We have course instructors who are working on field-based assignments. We have mentor teachers out in the field, those classroom teachers who we want to hear from. We want to know what they have to say. And then the interns themselves have ideas about teaching that they bring with them and that are growing and being shaped along the way. So you can imagine that with all of those voices in the conversation, the feedback that they receive is often unfocused because people have different things that they decide to is important to them, that they want to talk about, that is particular to them and their practice or the course that they're teaching. And it's often isolated. It also often comes in small snippets at different times when it's not involved with other participants. And then oftentimes those conversations are running parallel to one another. Course instructors and field instructors are giving information at different times, and that's at the best. Sometimes it's actually conflicting information. So sometimes course instructors are saying one thing while field instructors are really saying something else, and it can become quite confusing for interns. So the way that we've decided to address this is through Edthena. And I'm going to show you a little clip. Uh-oh. Yeah, I wanted to make sure it was up, though.
Up here.
Oop, you're going to have to do that one. Sorry, we've got multiple multimedia. Now I can't find the thing. So I'm just going to play you a clip from a 4th grade classroom of an intern who's actually doing a video of a course assignment for her math methods course, and she's launching a mathematics lesson.
Damon, what's the first condition? What's one of the things I underlined up there? So we can only pull out 2 coins. Shannon, what's one of the conditions? Okay, so we can only pull out 2 coins. We only use pennies, nickels, and dimes.
No, you don't have to write it. Just pay attention.
Just pay attention.
All right, what's my 3rd condition? Raise your hand. You don't have to write it down. It'll be up here. What's our 3rd condition? Tori. Yep, so the amount of money or how many cents do you have? That's how you're going to record your answer. Is in
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I don't know that the audio is working very well on that. Technology is not working well. But Tim, can you move this up a little bit? So the interesting thing to track on in this piece of video that this intern uploaded is this was an assignment for a math methods course where she was launching a mathematics problem that was going to lead into a mathematics discussion. Yeah, so I wanted to be able to show you that the intern asks, you're really going.
Well, here's an intern
There you go.
responding to something that a course instructor
So the intern pointed out where the lesson launches, and then Lindsay is the course instructor. She comments as a course instructor on the math work that the intern is doing, and then her field instructor, Diane, can comment in addition to and add on to what the course instructor is saying, so that their feedback happens in a conversational way, and they can see what each other is saying without anyone having to be there. The field instructor actually was there for this lesson as well, in addition to that, but she didn't have to be, and she could see what the course instructor was saying, and the course instructor could see what she was saying, so that they could share that moment of teaching with the intern, and also give substantive feedback in a manageable way. Thank you. Yeah. Please. Right there. Thank you. So you can see that this helped us, again, to respond to one of our challenges, which is coherence in that message. We moved away from using unfocused feedback by having the frameworks for our high leverage practices embedded in Edthena. So you can see here that there's a drop-down menu where field instructors, mentor teachers, course instructors can choose to focus on one of the HLP's high leverage practices that they saw in the video as a way of supporting their conversation with the intern. It also helped us, as we said in that isolated feedback, to move towards conversations with multiple key players and perspectives, but anchored in that piece of teaching, allowing them to share that moment of teaching with the intern. And then, most importantly, I think in this example, is being able to see how that happened for building an opportunity for the field instructor to be in conversation with the course instructor and the intern, which is very rare. It's very rare that that can happen in the setting. Definitely much harder to do before Edthena. Now I'm going to turn it over to Meghan, who's going to talk about how we use this in coursework.
So the example I'm going to share with you it pertains to how Edthena has been helping us work on a particular core practice of teaching in the context of our course. And that particular core practice is explaining core content. So of course, explaining core content is essential for providing all students access to fundamental ideas and practices in a given subject matter area. And it's one of the high leverage practices that we focus in on in our elementary education program. We have a particular decomposition of that practice So it entails things like attending to the integrity of the subject matter and students' likely interpretation of it, being able to strategically choose and use representations and examples in order to build understanding and remediate misconceptions that children may have about particular content. In the context of one of our mathematics methods courses, we have an assignment that involves working with an individual student and giving that a particular explanation to that student around some mathematics content. This is a quite challenging assignment for a number of reasons, and I'm just going to name 3 of them for you right now. So one is this is actually a quite high-stakes situation. For both, for the teaching intern, him or herself, they want to be successful in that particular interaction. It's also high stakes for the child with whom that teaching intern is going to be working. They need a teaching intern who is prepared to be supporting their learning of that particular content. It's high stakes in other ways as well. It's high stakes in other ways as well. In addition, a second challenge is that written plans, which we often rely on for trying to assess whether a particular teaching intern is ready to go off and enact instruction with children, are limited in terms of being able to help us evaluate someone's preparation and to provide feedback. And the reason that I say that it is limited is that effective explanations entail the integration of talk, writing, the use of representations and gesture, many of which are hard to see in someone's written plan. I'm sure this idea is resonating for many of you in the room. One quick little visual of that is at one point several years ago when I had interns just turning in their plans and I was providing feedback on their plans, I would see like little text like this written in someone's plan. Draw a model while explaining. That doesn't give me much of a sense of how that person is going to draw that model or what that model is going to look like, or whether or not that person is attending to important features of that model that need to be represented and brought out for that particular student. So quite challenging to be relying on written, just the written plans in order to be thinking about evaluating someone's preparation and also to be giving them specific feedback as well. And the third piece here has to do with access to expertise. Teaching interns, while they themselves can work with one another and provide some feedback using particular frameworks that we introduce to them, they also do need access from more knowledgeable others that are going to help them see how they can improve the explanation they're about to go off and provide to a student. So Edthena has been a wonderful way for us to address some of these challenges. And so what we do now is as part of the planning process, I tell all of my teaching interns that along with the written plan that they'll be submitting for their work, there are some things that actually need to be in a written document. I want them to just do a video recording of themselves giving the explanation that they're going to then go off and use with children. So rather than writing out in paragraph form, a very long several paragraphs, actually just do the explanation. I want to be able to see what you're going to say, what you're going to be drawing, what you're going to be gesturing to. And the really nice thing about this is work they actually have to do anyways to go off and do it with kids. They need to actually practice talking the explanation. These videos, for the most part, they're quite quick. The one that I'll share with you in just a minute is about 90 seconds long. Of course, it takes teaching interns much longer than 90 seconds to produce these videos. So in many cases, I actually do think that they sit there and they try a couple of times. They learn things through the first time through, oh, I didn't draw something right in that representation. Something was off in terms of my talking, etc. All right. So the example that I'll share with you quickly has to do with fraction multiplication. It's a fraction multiplication problem. A student has already worked on the fraction multiplication problem previously, and now the teaching intern is going to be working individually with this student around fraction multiplication and needs to be prepared to give an explanation. As a course instructor, I'm attending to the parts of the decomposition of the practice when I'm providing feedback to that teaching intern. I'm not going to go into great detail about that with you right now, but you can just keep that in mind that is my larger frame for looking at that video. Okay, and so from there,
It was there.
oh, sorry. Right there? All right, right there. Okay, so this is just one of the videos from our course. And so as a course instructor, I've got this 1 and 32-second video. I sit down and I watch these videos and I comment in the video as I'm watching it. I'm not, for the purposes of what we're doing right now, I'm not going to leave all of the comments that I would leave if this was an actual instance in which I was providing that feedback to the teaching intern, but I think it will just give you a sense of what this might look like. And one thing that you might notice is that in the task that I had just shown you, the numbers were actually a little bit different than the numbers that this particular teaching intern chose to use in her video.
To start understanding how to multiply fractions, let's first look at a problem you're familiar with, but with different numbers. So Sammy's at her school's ice cream social, and she's feeling the need for some chocolate. Sammy decides to buy 1/2 of a pan of brownies that is 1/2 full. Sammy wants to know,
which is about to cause a problem in terms of the representation, in terms of being really clear to students about which fraction you're representing first and which fraction is taking a fraction, which of those is taking a fraction of that. So I would leave a comment at this point. I would put in a question right here. Consider changing your numbers. And I'm just putting this in right now. I tend to always, and I apologize for the all caps, I didn't realize that was happening. So as a course instructor, I would say something like, consider changing your numbers, and then I would probably typically write in a couple of sentences to give some rationale for why I'm suggesting that. And then I'll just hit submit. And that, as you can see,
how much of a total pan of brownies she will be buying. She wonders, what is 1/2 of 1/2? Another way that we can think about this is 1/2 times 1/2. So of the whole brownie pan, so this is the brownie pan, it is 1/2 full. So that's what we're shading. But she only wants to buy 1/2 of it. Or she wants to buy 1/2 of this.
So this is a really, really critical point at this point right now. And the teaching intern is kind of stumbling in this space and doesn't quite have the language right now. But she really needs to bring out the point that what this particular student in the story problem, Sammy, is trying to do is buy 1/2 of the brownies that are in the pan at this point. So the 1/2 is 1/2 of this part right here, not 1/2 of the entire whole. And so the comment that I would make to the intern now, I would put it in the suggestion place about saying, consider tracing the new whole. And I'd, of course, write a little bit more than that, but that gives you a sense of what would happen there.
So if this is the whole pan of brownies, and she sees it, and it's 1/2 full. From the part that's shaded, she only wants 1/2 of it. So then we can take the shaded part and divide it into 2 equal parts.
Right here, I would notice strength. So one thing that we often know about our teaching interns is that they, when talking about fractions, won't always use the word equal when they really are intending, and equal is actually quite important. So this particular intern did use the word equal. So like nice use. This is important.
We want one of those parts. So we're going to shade just one of those parts. Now we can see what fraction of the whole pan she's buying. So from what we have right now.
Okay, and I'm going to stop it at this point. I think you get a sense of what this is like. So then the teaching intern gets this video back, can see all of my comments that I've recorded. I forgot to hit send, to hit submit on the third one. And then they can just click on any of these and go back to that instance.
Of a total pan of brownies she will be.
All right. So, in summary, the use of Edthena in the context of this work on explaining core content does a number of things. It lowers it allows us to address the high stakesness of the situation by lowering, and we are able to lower the stakes by supporting walkthroughs which ensure that our teaching interns are ready to go off and enact that instruction. And I can actually have someone resubmit a video if that first video that they turn in does not lead me to feel confident that they'll be able to go off and do that work well with children. In terms of the limitations of written plan, the video provides opportunities for feedback on more aspects of the enacted practice than one could necessarily see in a written plan. And the third one is it provides more access to expertise for all of our teaching interns. And actually, as a course instructor, it does not take that long for me to go through these videos and provide feedback on them. There's no way in a typical class period that I could go around and see 28 different teaching interns practice giving their explanation to me, but I can go off, spend a couple of hours one afternoon between classes and do this for them. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Tim.
All right, so the piece that I'm going to be talking about is how we go from individual use cases like this to trying to use it more programmatically. So I imagine in your institutions you also have the pioneering spirit of intellectual freedom where people all do different things and they love those different things. And what we're trying to figure out is a way to support collective work around shared tools so that we can be learning and have a growing community around them. So basically I'm going to go back to Kara's awesome delta symbol, and I'm going to talk about the 3 years of ramping into being a program that's trying to use Edthena to support learning from video. So in the organizational change literature, they often have these stages of change, like the stages of uptake on a new innovation. And so they start with, this one starts with denial. We didn't have a whole lot of denying based on SneakerNet and the aptly acronymed DAMs. Then we went through a piece where we had some exploration, some experimentation, where individual volunteer instructors were willing to try it out to see what was happening. And in the process, when they were trying those things out, they said, oh, this doesn't, group making we have to have a group making party in order to make the groups, or we have to do, we can't do this, and we thought we'd be able to do it. So you have that trying it out and that resistance that happens along with it as more people try to be using a particularly new thing. And then toward the end of the cycle, the literature describes this idea of commitment and maintenance, and how is it that you sort of go forward as an organization that continues to use something and to support that over time as new people come into the mix, and so on. So I'm going to sort of use Kara's timeline to say what happens at these 3 different points in time, and I'm going to try to share some data with you that I hope will illustrate how the uptake has gone. So in that first year in 2011, 2012, in that winter that Meghan first used it, we had one course, and we tried to use it for one performance assessment. So the performance assessment was interns giving directions in their field placements and showing that students understood their directions and actually followed those directions. So some logistics related to that. One was the cost. So because it was such a small group, we were able to convince the School of Education to use something like an innovation fund to support our work in this particular instance so that we could learn about it. The availability was to all the interns that were in the classes that Meghan was teaching, and a few of the volunteer faculty had access to it, but it wasn't anything larger than that at that point. Opportunities to learn. So Meghan did a lot of individual trial and error on her own. We also had, reading on Edthena, they had these help sheets, and I'll say that in a little bit, but we also had an orientation, like here's the overview, here's how it works. And then we also had some supports in place. So even with the beta version, the before release version, there were frequently asked questions that had documents that explained all of that sort of thing. We were emailing each other quite a bit. And then we had lovely people like Kara, who just happened to be technologically interested colleagues, who would help with that first go-round. So then in that second year of the work, we went from a group that in 2011 had one instance of using it to having 17 classes that were using that particular technology. And going back to the stages there, I think because so many people were experiencing this pain point of how are we even supposed to use video in our classes, I think there was a real outcry for, well, how come Meghan's the only one who's using it? So that's kind of an interesting strategy, right? Like limit the resource and everybody will want to do it instead of you forcing it on them. So we went from 2 sections of classes using Edthena to having over 30 sections of classes using Edthena. And we went from having a few hundred assets, and by assets that means video and pictures of kid work and lesson plans in packages, to having something more like 9,000 of them. So you can imagine with that sort of a growth, there's going to be things that are needed to be done at the program level to make sure that that's still productive, to be helping people in using those things. So I'll use the same set of ideas to talk about this. So this time, there were too many people involved, so the School of Education wouldn't pick up the bill. So it was my job to go around to the classes and convince interns that they should buy it like a book. Like, this is kind of like a book, so it's cheaper than a book. So we want you to buy this book, and you can use this book across all of your classes. And so it's like the sales pitch, right? So, and they did it because you buy the required books. But it wasn't always with a smile. So as far as opportunities to learn about that system, we held special beginning of the year orientation sessions for instructors. We walked through some examples. They had a chance to ask questions, and we were helping them with that. But then they went off and helped the interns learn to use Edthena. We didn't do that as a program. And then as far as the supports are concerned, we still had those frequently asked questions guidelines. They also Edthena also instituted a help desk where you could just press on a question mark. I think the first time it was like a life preserver or something. If you clicked on it, and then you could basically say, like, what's your question? And the thing that was really great is because Adam's on the West Coast and we're on East Coast time, when our interns were putting off their assignments until late at night, they were still awake. So when there were problems, they would actually answer them before it was a panic point and wasn't due in the inbox in the morning. So that was very, very helpful. We also, on our end of things, generated what we called quick reference guides. So here's how to set up a group. And we had screenshots and little things. And some of it was very specific to Michigan because some of the things that they would need to be doing or some of the reasons they were doing it for, like we had naming conventions for groups because we wanted the groups to be named in a particular way. So we had these sort of specialized U of M versions of these things. And then we also created a TE support group, which is basically people on our end when instructors had questions or interns had questions that were sort of more Michigan-centric than they were Edthena-centric, we could help to be answering those sorts of questions. And so I hope across these categories you hear that we're learning. I mean, that's basically the point, was we were trying new things because there were different people in the mix, and we're always trying to sort of say, how can we make this more of a routine part of the work we do? How can we set up people to be successful? And really using this tool for formative feedback in their classes. So in the third year of this innovation, so we went from, way in the beginning, 1 class to over 20 classes. And we went from 2 sections a long time ago to over 50 sections. And we went from a couple hundred assets to almost 20,000 assets. So you can get a sense just from these, and it's sort of all the bars are so interestingly proportional. So it isn't like, the one thing that's, I guess, interesting to notice is that there wasn't like exponential growth within particular courses of having lots more. When you had more courses, you could predict in a way the amount of more assets that would be in the system. I think the thing that's lovely about Edthena, especially now, is that you can sort and look for things in different ways so that you can find what you're going for, but you can imagine from the program end of things, like some of you probably already imagine, like, how do they use it for accreditation? We need ways for instructors and other folks to help point us to what is important within there. And what we've been using actually is this thing that Adam was talking about before, of these explorations. So when we tell instructors, if you think something's important enough for us as a program to be hanging on to, you need to be making it an exploration. And then we go to the explorations, find the information that's there, see how the interns are developing with respect to those core teaching practices that Kara talked about earlier. So with the cost, so remember at first it was we foot the bill, then it was you foot the bill, and now it's you foot the bill but you don't know it. So it was rolled into the, Beth Griesbach here, and she was instrumental in helping us with that particular maneuver. And it was really, really important because it just sort of was in the flow of the work that you do, and it's covered by your financial aid, and these are your lab fees and those other sorts of things. You're able to make it more normalized, more of the this is what we do, this is what you pay your tuition for, and that's what it covers. The availability was pretty much the same as it was before, except we ramped up some of the possibilities for our instructors to have more access to the tools within Edthena, and then we also started reaching out to mentor teachers, especially, to have them think about starting to do some of the commenting that you saw a little bit earlier. Now we do, for opportunities to learn, we go around to the classes. We don't have course instructors telling interns how to be using the system. Folks in the program go around to make sure we get to everybody, to make sure everybody gets the same information, so that they know what they're doing when they use it. And as in terms of supports, the supports are pretty much the same, but now we force everyone in the groups that they make to make our TE support group a member, so that when they ask us stuff, we can just go to it and try to figure out what's going on with it to help to answer questions. So we're still learning to use this. I mean, if we go back to Kara's timeline, remember that it extends in both directions. So, we're still learning how to be doing this. I mean, we've sort of figured out some things with costs. We've figured out some things with professional learning opportunities, but we still have a lot to learn, like how to identify things that we want to be using later for accreditation, or how is it that we could, I wish I had a graph that looked like these for the number of mentor teachers that are participating in conversations. Like, that's where we want to go. So it is this process, and always sort of looking at it and saying, what is it that we could do next to do this better, to make this more integrated, to make it a meaningful part of people's learning about teaching. So with that, I guess I'll say, I see the time here, so that's